Shut up, you idiot. Who asked you? The husband yelled at his wife in front of their guests, humiliating her once again. She stood up in silence and left. The guests looked at each other, and in the morning, the husband woke to find she was gone. Her things had vanished, and only silence remained in the house. This is a story about a woman who found the strength to say enough to her fears and humiliation. The evening began as most evenings did in a house where happiness had long been a carefully constructed fiction for the neighbors. Alara set the table, arranging the plates with the mechanical precision that comes after 15 years of marriage. 15 years during which she had learned to be invisible, inaudible, non-existent. Tonight, guests were coming. Derek and his wife, Chloe, old college friends of her husband, Julian. Alara remembered a time when they all used to laugh until they cried, when Julian would wrap his arm around her waist and proudly introduce her as the love of his life. That was in another lifetime, one that more or less ended when their daughter, Maya, was born. Maya was now 14. She sat in her room, pretending to do her homework, but she was really listening to music through her headphones, trying to block out the tense silence of the house. The girl had long ago learned to sense the atmosphere the way an animal senses an approaching storm. Julian walked into the kitchen, buttoning his shirt. He was a tall, attractive, 3-year-old man, with the first hints of gray at his temples that gave him an air of solidity. He cast a critical eye over the table. "Did you make the artichoke dip?" he asked, not even looking at his wife. "Yes, of course. And the mini quiches. The roast beef is almost ready," Alara replied quietly. "Almost." Julian raised his voice. "They'll be here in half an hour. Do you even understand that Derek is an important person? He has a senior position at the Department of Commerce now." Alara pressed her lips together and continued chopping herbs. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from an endless weariness that gnawed at her soul. "Everything will be ready on time," she said. Julian snorted and went into the living room. He turned on the television. Alara heard the sound of a bottle being opened. He had already started drinking. By the time the guests arrived, he would be at that point where his tongue loosened and his self-control weakened. The doorbell rang at exactly 8 p.m. Alara quickly wiped her hands on her apron, smoothed her hair, and went to open it. On the doorstep stood Derek and Chloe, both impeccably dressed, radiating success and well-being. "Alara!" Chloe exclaimed, kissing her on the cheek. "It's been too long. You look wonderful." The lie sounded so natural that Alara almost believed it, though she knew she looked like a tired 40-year-old woman who had stopped taking care of herself because she no longer saw the point. "Please, come in," she smiled. Julian greeted the guests with a wide grin, shaking Derek's hand firmly and hugging Chloe. He was the personification of hospitality and charm. This was the man his friends, colleagues, and neighbors knew. This was the man he knew how to be when he needed to. The dinner started off wonderfully. Julian told jokes. Derek shared stories from his work. Chloe praised Alara's roast beef. Everything was perfect, like a picture from a magazine. Alara sat quietly, occasionally chiming in with brief comments, pouring wine for the guests, and making sure their plates were never empty. "And remember, Julian, how you and I..." Derek began another story from their youth. Alara was only half listening, thinking about how she needed to take Maya to the doctor tomorrow morning. The girl's stomach had been hurting for a week, but Julian had said she was faking it to skip school. She also had to pay the utility bills and buy groceries. "Alara," Julian called out sharply. "Are you even listening?" She started and looked up. "Sorry, I was distracted." "Derek is asking about your job," Julian said slowly, as if speaking to a foolish child. "You work at that pharmacy, right? As a tech?" "Yes, as a pharmacy technician." Alara nodded, turning to Derek. "And how is it there? Do you like it?" he asked politely. Alara opened her mouth to answer, but Julian cut her off. "What's there to like?" he laughed, taking a large gulp of wine. "She stands on her feet all day selling pills. Though for her, that's probably the height of her ambitions. Remember Derek? In college, she was barely scraping by with C's. I thought I was marrying a smart woman, and in the end, it turned out..." He didn't finish the sentence, but made an eloquent gesture with his hand. Alara felt the heat rise in her face. Chloe cleared her throat uncomfortably. Derek stared intently at his plate. "Julian, why are you doing this?" Alara began in a low voice. "Doing what?" He turned to her, his eyes brimming with anger. "I'm telling the truth. It is the truth. Or do you want to claim you're some kind of ambitious woman? That you've achieved anything in life?" "I'm raising our daughter," Alara said, trying to remain calm. I take care of the house, the family. Oh, here comes the victim. Julian raised his hands theatrically. Do you hear that, friends? She takes care of the family. And what is the house? Cooking, cleaning. Any housekeeper can handle that. And the daughter, look at her always with a sour face, barely getting by in school, just like her mother. Julian, isn't that enough? Derek intervened cautiously. Let's toast to the old times. But Julian was unstoppable. The alcohol had loosened his tongue, and his accumulated irritation demanded an outlet. And as always, the target was Alara. You know, Derek, what the main problem of my life is? He continued, ignoring the tense silence. I tied myself to this little gray mouse. I thought she would grow, that she would blossom. And what happened? She let herself go. Look at her. When was the last time she went to a salon? When did she buy a decent dress? With your money, Alara said, her voice quiet but clear. You don't give me anything for myself. Everything I earn goes to Maya and the groceries. Julian shot up from his chair. The chair screeched as it slid back. Oh, is that so? So I give you nothing? This house? Whose is it? Who bought it? Who supports this family? I work like a dog so you can have everything. And you dare to reproach me? I'm not reproaching you, I just said. Shut up, you idiot. Who asked you? Julian shouted so loudly that Chloe flinched and dropped her fork. Alara turned pale. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back quickly, refusing to let them fall. Not now, not in front of the guests. Although, what did it matter anymore? They saw everything. Everyone saw, but everyone stayed silent, because it was easier that way, because nobody wanted to get involved in another family's business. She rose slowly from the table and carefully folded her napkin. Excuse me, she said softly, addressing no one in particular, and walked out of the room. Derek and Chloe looked at each other. A heavy, oppressive silence hung in the room. Julian sat back down, exhaled nervously, and poured himself more wine. Well, she's ruined the mood, he grumbled. Always the same. She can't just keep her mouth shut. Always has some complaint. Julian, Chloe began cautiously. Maybe you were too harsh. Harsh? He scoffed. That's putting it mildly. You don't know what I have to put up with every day. She's become nothing. A miserable whiner. She used to at least try, had some interest in life. And now? A spineless dish rag. Derek remained silent, swirling the wine in his glass. He remembered Alara before the marriage, a bright, laughing girl. He glanced at Chloe sitting beside him, well-dressed and confident. No, they were different. Very different. Maybe it's time for us to go, he suggested. It's getting late. Come on, why leave? Julian tried to regain his cheerful tone. Let's have another drink. Let's remember our youth. But the magic of the evening was broken. After another half-hour of polite conversation, the guests began to say their goodbyes. Julian saw them to the door, assuring them that everything was fine, that it was just women's issues, that Alara was just overly sensitive. When the door closed behind the guests, he returned to the living room and started clearing the empty bottles from the table. Alara didn't come out of the bedroom. Julian could hear the water running in the bathroom behind her door. She must be getting ready for bed. He gathered the bottles, looked at the table full of dirty dishes, and felt a pang of irritation. She could wash them in the morning. He was tired. Julian entered the bedroom without knocking. Alara was sitting on the edge of the bed, already in her nightgown. Her hair was down and her face was scrubbed clean. Without makeup, she looked younger, almost like the girl he had once fallen in love with. So, are you offended? He asked as he began to undress. Alara was silent, looking out the window. Beyond the glass, the lights of neighboring houses twinkled, where other families also lived, where there were also their own dramas, their own secrets. I'm talking to you. Julian raised his voice. I hear you, she answered softly. And what now? Are you going to pout? Give me the silent treatment for a week like last time? Alara turned to him. There was no resentment or anger in her eyes, only an infinite weariness. Why do you do this, Julian? She asked. Why do you humiliate me in front of people? What have I done to you? You've done nothing to me, he burst out. That's just it, nothing. You do absolutely nothing. You just exist, like a piece of furniture. I work, I raise our daughter, I run the house. Oh, shut up about the house, Julian interrupted. Do you have any idea how embarrassed I was today? Derek is a successful man. His wife has a career. They have it all together the way it should be. And me? I have a wife who's a pharmacy technician, who looks like a cleaning lady. Those words hit harder than the shouting in front of the guests. Alara felt something inside her crack not break completely, that would require one more blow, but it splintered, on the verge of collapsing. "You're ashamed of me?" she said slowly. "Of me, the woman who gave you a child, who for 15 years—" "Don't start," Julian cut her off, getting into bed and turning his back to her. "I'm tired of your whining. I want to sleep." Alara sat for a while longer, motionless, then lay down on her side of the bed, careful not to touch her husband. There were only a few inches between them, but it felt like a chasm. She didn't sleep. She lay with her eyes open, thinking, remembering. When did it all start to go wrong? Maybe right after the wedding, when Julian started making comments at first gentle, almost affectionate, then increasingly harsh. Or when Maya was born, and he suddenly discovered that his wife no longer belonged only to him, that there was someone more important. Or maybe the problem wasn't a specific moment, but the fact that she endured it all. She kept quiet, swallowed the insults, hoped he would change, that one day he would wake up and be the same Julian who wrote her poems and took her to museums. A muffled sob came from behind the wall. Maya was crying in her room. The girl had heard everything. Of course she had. How could she not hear that shouting? Alara got up carefully and went to her daughter's room. Maya was lying with her back to the wall, her shoulders trembling. "Honey," Alara whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed and stroking her hair. "Mom, why does Dad treat you like that?" Maya sobbed, turning to her. Her face was soaked with tears. "Why does he yell at you? You don't do anything wrong." "Shh, it's okay." Alara hugged her daughter tightly. "It's all right. Adults sometimes have disagreements. It's normal." "It's not normal," Maya protested. "He insults you, he demeans you. My friends say they hear him shouting. I'm embarrassed to go to school." Alara froze. So the neighbors could hear. Of course they could. The walls of their house were thin. Everyone knew, everyone heard. Everyone pretended nothing was wrong. "Listen to me," she said, looking her daughter in the eyes. "Whatever happens between your father and me, it has nothing to do with you. We both love you." "He doesn't love me either," Maya said quietly. "He says I'm dumb, that I do poorly in school, that I take after you." Alara felt her heart clench in pain. "You are smart and wonderful," she said firmly, kissing her daughter on the forehead. "Don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise, not even Dad. Do you hear me?" Maya nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. They stayed like that for a while. Then Alara tucked her daughter in, covered her with the blanket, and returned to the bedroom. Julian was already asleep, snoring. The alcohol had done its job. He always fell asleep quickly after drinking. Alara lay down and closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Thoughts, each one heavier than the last, swirled in her head. She thought about Maya, about how the girl was growing up in this atmosphere of constant tension, how she was absorbing a model of relationships where the man shouts and the woman endures. Did she really want her daughter to repeat her fate? She thought about herself. When had she stopped being a person and become a shadow? When was the last time she did something for herself, and not for her family? When was the last time she truly laughed? And she thought about Julian, the man she once loved. He had disappeared, vanished, replaced by this stranger filled with rage who only saw her as a source of irritation. Or maybe he never disappeared. Maybe he was always like this and just hid it well before. During the honeymoon phase, everyone tries to seem better. And then, when the masks fall, the harsh truth remains. By dawn, Alara hadn't slept a minute. She got up early, before the alarm went off, showered, and went to the kitchen. The dirty dishes from the night before were piled in the sink, witnesses to an evening that now felt like a turning point. She started the coffee maker, sat at the table, and suddenly saw her reflection in the dark screen of the powered-off television. A tired woman, with dull eyes and slumped shoulders. Was that really her? Was this shadow all that was left of the bright girl who dreamed of a great love and a happy family? The phone buzzed in her robe pocket. Alara took it out. It was a message from her friend Hope, with whom she had studied in college and whom life had later taken to another city. "Hey, Alara. I know it's been a while since I wrote. I just wanted to say that if you ever need help, I'm always here. I know a great therapist, a really good specialist. And in general, if you ever want to talk, call me anytime. Kisses." Alara read the message several times. Hope knew how. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Although in their last conversation, Alara had mentioned that things at home weren't great. Apparently, Hope had read between the lines what Alara was trying to hide. She wanted to reply but didn't know what to write. Thanks. Everything's fine would be a lie. Yes. I need help. I don't know how to go on living was too honest, too terrifying, even to admit to herself. Alara put the phone down and started washing the dishes. The mechanical work soothed her. Her hands moved on their own, not requiring her mind's participation. She had just finished the last plate when Maya walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, Mom," the girl said quietly. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" Maya shrugged as she sat at the table. Her eyes were red. She had probably cried a lot after her mother left her room. "Mom," she began after a pause, "are you happy?" The question caught Alara by surprise. She stood motionless, the coffee pot in her hands. "Why do you ask?" "Just because. My literature teacher said that every person has a right to happiness, and I thought, you never smile. Never. Not even when it's just you and me." Alara put down the coffee pot, walked over to her daughter, and knelt beside her. "Happiness is a complex concept, Maya. It can be different for everyone. For me, happiness is you. Watching you grow, watching you become an adult. But that's not a real answer," Maya interrupted with unexpected clarity. "I'm not asking if you love me. I'm asking if you are happy. You, as a person." Alara looked at her daughter and suddenly understood that she was no longer a child. 14 is the age when you start to see the world not through the rose-tinted glasses of childhood, but as it really is. "Honestly," she replied, "probably not. But that doesn't mean I'm unhappy. It's just life." "That's not life, Mom." Maya took her hand. "That's existing. We learned about it in social studies. A person shouldn't just exist, but live, develop, enjoy things. And you, it's like you're dead inside." Her daughter's words sounded like a sentence. Alara felt a lump rise in her throat. "Maya, don't say that." "But it's true," the girl's voice was filled with desperation. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared of growing up and becoming just like you. Of finding a man who will yell at me and humiliate me, and I'll just take it. Because you take it. Because that's the example you're setting for me." Alara flinched as if she'd been struck. She had never thought of it from that angle, that her patience, her sacrifice, wasn't nobility, but a lesson for her daughter. A lesson in how not to live. "I don't want you to repeat my mistakes," she whispered. "Then stop repeating them yourself," Maya said with wisdom beyond her years. "Please." At that moment, Julian entered the kitchen, unshaven, rumpled from sleep, with a sour expression on his face. He went to the refrigerator without a greeting. "Where's my blue shirt?" he asked, taking out a carton of juice. "In the closet, on a hanger," Alara replied, getting up from the floor. "Why isn't it ironed?" "I ironed it 2 days ago. It's hanging on the right." "Well, go get it and bring it to me," Julian snapped irritably. "Or do I have to do everything myself?" Alara looked at him, then at Maya, who was sitting with her head down, and suddenly, she felt an unbearable shame. Shame for herself, for allowing herself to be treated this way. Shame in front of her daughter, who saw everything and drew her own conclusions. "Go get it yourself," she said quietly. Julian turned, not believing what he heard. "What did you say?" "I said, go get it yourself," Alara repeated, a little louder. "You have hands, you have legs. The closet isn't in another city. Have you lost your mind?" Julian took a step toward her. "After last night, you still dare to talk back to me?" After last night, Alara straightened up, looking him in the eye. "I understood a lot of things. And I'm not going to tolerate this treatment anymore." "Oh, really, is that it?" Julian let out a laugh, but it was a cruel one. "A mutiny on the ship. Look at you, a little feminist. So, tell me, how are you not going to tolerate it? Are you going to leave? Where would you go? On your pharmacy tech salary? Rent a room in some slum?" Alara fell silent, but there was something new in her eyes, a spark that didn't die out even under the pressure of his rage. "That's right." Julian nodded with satisfaction. "You're quiet because you know that without me, you're nothing, and you never have been. So get this through your head. I'm in charge here, and things will be the way I say." He turned and left the kitchen. A minute later, the front door slammed. He had left for work without breakfast. Maya lifted her eyes to her mother, her eyes full of tears. "Mom?" "It's all right," Alara hugged her daughter. "Everything is going to be all right, I promise you." She didn't know how she would keep that promise, but she knew one thing. Something had to change. Immediately. After dropping Maya off at school, Alara returned home and sat down at the computer. She opened a search engine and started looking for information on women's rights in a divorce, on how property is divided, on whether it's possible to secure housing with a minor child, on psychological help for victims of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse. She had always thought abuse meant bruises and broken bones, but now she understood that the shouting, the humiliation, the constant pressure that was violence too. Psychological violence, and its scars weren't on the body, but on the soul. She read stories from other women, stories similar to hers, sometimes even more terrible. She read advice from psychologists and lawyers, and with every line she read, her determination grew stronger. She couldn't go on living like this. She couldn't destroy herself and damage her daughter's mental health for the sake of an illusory stability. During her lunch break, Alara called Hope. "Hello? Alara, is that you?" Her friend answered in surprise. "Yes, it's me. Hope, do you remember you wrote about a therapist? Can you give me her contact information?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Alara heard Hope take a deep breath, as if preparing for an important conversation. Of course I can." Her friend began to speak quickly. "Alara, I'm so glad you called. I've wanted to talk to you for a while, but I was afraid of meddling. But the last time we spoke, I could tell something was wrong." "Nothing is right," Alara confessed quietly, feeling her voice tremble treacherously. "Nothing at all." "Alara, honey, listen to me," Hope said gently but firmly. "I know what this is like. My sister went through something similar. She also thought she had to endure it, that it was her fault, that she wasn't trying hard enough. But you know what? When she finally left that man, it was like she was reborn. Yes, it was hard at first. Yes, she had to start from scratch, but she became happy. I mean, truly happy." Alara listened, the phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had held it in for so long, had pretended everything was fine for so long, that now, hearing words of support, she couldn't hold back. "I'm scared, Hope," she whispered. "I'm 40 years old. I have a teenage daughter, I have a small salary. How can I start a new life?" "The same way everyone does," Hope answered. "Step by step. With small steps. First, talk to a therapist to understand what's happening, to find your strength. Then, a lawyer to know your rights. And then, you act. I'm with you. I'll help you with anything I can. I have contacts who can guide you, give advice. You are not alone. Do you hear me?" "Thank you," Alara wiped her tears. "Thank you." They talked for another 10 minutes. Hope gave her the contact information for the therapist, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Reed, who specialized in family issues and worked with victims of domestic abuse. Alara wrote down the phone number and address, promising to call. After the conversation with Hope, she felt something new, not exactly hope, but something close to it, as if in a dark, locked room, a thin sliver of light had appeared under the door. That evening, Julian came home in a better mood. He even said hello, which was progress after the morning's argument. Alara set the table, called Maya for dinner, and the three of them sat down, an ordinary family at an ordinary dinner. "How was work?" Alara asked, passing Julian a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "Fine," he answered briefly. "Montoya had trouble with his reports. I had to help him sort it out. And you, Maya, how was school?" "Good," the girl avoided looking at her father. "I got the highest grade in literature for my essay." "Well done," Julian nodded, and Alara saw Maya's face light up. The daughter so rarely heard praise from her father that any kind word was a treasure to her. And that broke Alara's heart, understanding that her daughter was starved for paternal attention, for his approval, that Maya was ready to rejoice at crumbs because she didn't know it could be any other way. The dinner passed quietly. Julian even told a couple of stories from work, and Alara found herself thinking that in those moments, he still resembled the man she had fallen in love with. But those flashes were becoming rarer, and the periods of anger and irritation were getting longer. "Hey," Julian said after Maya went to do her homework. "About last night, well, maybe I went a little too far. There's just a lot of stress at work, and I let it get to me." It was the closest thing to an apology he was capable of. Before, Alara would have accepted it, would have been glad the conflict was over. But now, she remained silent, looking at him. "Did you hear what I said?" Julian frowned. "Are you going to pout again?" "I heard you," Alara replied. "Julian, we need to talk. Seriously. About what?" "About us. About our family. About what's happening." Julian leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest in a defensive posture. "Nothing's happening. It's normal family life. Everyone argues. Everyone makes up. Those aren't arguments, Julian. It's constant humiliation. You yell at me, you insult me, you tell me I'm worthless. In front of our daughter, in front of guests, in front of the neighbors who hear everything through the walls. Here we go again. Julian got up from the table. I thought we were having a quiet dinner, and you're starting this again. You always ruin everything. I ruin it? Alara also stood up. Me? Who else? I work hard, I make money, I support the family, and all you know how to do is complain and reproach. I'm not complaining. Alara's voice rose, and she herself was surprised. She so rarely allowed herself to raise her voice. I'm stating that our family is falling apart, that our daughter cries at night, that I can't remember the last time I felt like a person and not a servant. A servant? Julian took a step toward her, his face contorted with rage. You consider yourself a servant? Fine. You're free. Go. Live however you want. We'll see how you sing without my money, without this house. Maybe I will leave, the words slipped out of Alara before she could think. Julian stood still. He clearly didn't expect that response. Usually, Alara got scared at his threats, started to calm him down, to apologize. But not this time. What did you say? He enunciated slowly. I said, maybe I will leave, Alara repeated, feeling her heart pound. Maybe I really would be better off alone than with a man who doesn't respect me, doesn't value me, doesn't love me. Doesn't love you? Julian smirked, but something like fear flashed in his eyes. I've dedicated my whole life to you. I married you, had a child with you, bought a house. That's not love, according to you? That's obligation, Alara said quietly. But not love. Love is when you don't humiliate a person, when you care about their feelings, when you see them as a human being and not a thing you can order around. Learned how to give smart speeches, have you? Julian turned away. Filled your head with your women's magazines, or did your friends put ideas in your head? Hope, I bet. She was always a shrew. Hope is a good person who actually cares about me, unlike my husband. Ah, so that's it. Julian spun around. So, I'm a bad husband. Fine, list my sins. I don't drink myself into a stupor. I don't hit you. I bring money home. What more do you want? Respect? Alara answered simply. Just respect and to be treated like a human being. Respect has to be earned, Julian shouted. And what have you done for me to respect you? You work in your little pharmacy earning peanuts. You walk around the house in an old robe. Look at Chloe, Derek's wife. Now that's a woman. She takes care of herself. She has a career. She's interesting to talk to. And you? And I... Alara felt something inside her break definitively. I'm not going to listen to this anymore. She turned and headed for the bedroom. Where are you going? Julian yelled at her back. I'm talking to you. The conversation is over. Alara threw over her shoulder and closed the door behind her. She leaned her back against the door, breathing heavily. Her hands were shaking, her temples were throbbing, but inside, beneath the fear and turmoil, there was a new strength. She had finally said what she thought. She had finally not swallowed the offense, not kept silent. Behind the door, Julian was still yelling something. Then the front door slammed. He had left, probably to go to his friends or to a bar. He always did that after fights. Alara took out her phone and looked at the number for the therapist, Dr. Reed. Tomorrow she would call and make an appointment. That would be the first step. She opened the closet and pulled out an old duffel bag. Then she started packing things into it, hers and Maya's. Not everything, just the essentials. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do, but she wanted to be ready. There was a soft knock on the door. Mom? Came Maya's voice. Come in, honey. Maya entered and saw the open bag, the neatly folded clothes. Her eyes widened. Are we leaving? Alara sat on the bed and patted the space next to her. Maya sat down, and Alara took her hand. I don't know exactly what will happen next, she said honestly, but I want you to be prepared, just in case. If we have to leave, we'll leave quickly, you understand? Maya nodded, tears welling in her eyes. And where will we go? First, to Hope's house. She lives a few states away, remember? She has a big house, lives alone. She said we can stay with her until we find our own place. And Dad? Alara sighed heavily. Dad. We'll probably live separately for a while. We might get a divorce. I haven't decided completely yet. But things can't go on as they are. Maya was silent, processing what she had heard. Then, she suddenly hugged her mother tightly, desperately. I was so afraid you'd never decide, she whispered. I was so scared we'd keep living like this forever, that you would just endure it, and I'd have to watch and go crazy. Alara stroked her daughter's hair, holding back her own tears. How had she not understood before how much all of this was affecting the child? How could she have been so blind? "Forgive me," she said. "Forgive me for not being able to take this step for so long. I thought for your sake I had to keep the family together, that a child needs both parents, even if things are bad between them." "No." Maya pulled away and looked her mother in the eyes. "I don't need a family like that. I need a mom who doesn't cry at night, who smiles, who lives and doesn't just exist." Those words, almost a literal repetition of her words from the morning, sounded like a manifesto. Alara nodded, wiping her tears. "Then we'll do it," she said firmly. "But for now, not a word to your father. You understand? He must not know what we're planning. Otherwise, there will be a huge fight, and he might stop us from leaving." "I understand," Maya nodded seriously. "I'll act like always." They stayed together a little longer. Then Maya went back to her room to finish her homework, and Alara hid the bag in the back of the closet, under the winter clothes. Julian returned late, after midnight. Alara heard him walk unsteadily to the bathroom and then fall into bed. He smelled of beer and cigarettes. He tried to hug her, but Alara moved away. "Don't be mad," he mumbled sleepily. "I didn't mean it. It just happens." She didn't answer, lying still until his breathing evened out and he fell asleep. Then she lay for a long time staring into the darkness, planning her next steps. In the morning, Julian acted as if nothing had happened. As he got ready for work, he even kissed Alara on the cheek. A formal, cold kiss, more out of habit than feeling. As soon as the door closed behind him, Alara dialed the number for Dr. Reed, the therapist. "Hello, this is Dr. Reed's office," a calm female voice answered. "Good morning, my name is Alara. Hope gave me your number. I'd like to make an appointment." "Of course, Alara. Can you tell me briefly what's concerning you?" Alara hesitated, searching for the words. "I'm having family problems. My husband is psychologically abusive towards me. He humiliates me. I can't live like this anymore, but I don't know how to act correctly." "I understand." Dr. Reed's voice was warm, without judgment. "It's very brave of you to have called. That's the first and most important step. Tell me, is there a risk of physical violence?" "No, he doesn't hit me. But he yells, insults, and humiliates me in front of other people. That is also violence, Alara. Psychological violence is no less destructive than physical, sometimes even more so. I have an opening today at 6 p.m. Could you come then?" Alara quickly calculated. She finished work at 5. Would she make it in time? "Yes, I can. Thank you so much." She wrote down the address and hung up. Her hands were shaking, but it wasn't weakness. It was the excitement of something new, unknown, but necessary. The day at work dragged on painfully. Alara served customers, dispensed medications, gave advice, but her mind was elsewhere. She replayed the conversation with Julian, the events of the last few days, over and over, and with each replay, she became more convinced that she had made the right decision. During her lunch break, she went to the bank and opened an account in her name, separate from their joint one. She transferred all her personal savings into it, a small sum she had been secretly putting away for the last 2 years. About $2,500, money for a rainy day. Though she never imagined that day would come so soon. At 6 p.m. sharp, she stood before the office door with the sign, Evelyn Reed, Ph.D., licensed psychologist. Alara took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," a voice called from inside. The office was small but cozy. Soft lighting, a comfortable armchair, a box of tissues, and a pitcher of water on the table. Dr. Reed greeted her with a smile, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. "Hello, Alara. Please, sit down. Make yourself at home." Alara sat, clutching her purse in her hands. "I don't even know where to begin." "Start with what brought you here. With what's most important," Dr. Reed suggested gently. And Alara began to talk, at first hesitantly, stumbling over her words, then more and more fluently. She spoke of 15 years of marriage, of how Julian had changed little by little, of how at first it was small reproaches, then criticism, then open insults, of how she had lost herself, piece by piece, until she became a shadow, of her daughter who was growing up in an atmosphere of constant tension, of the night he had humiliated her in front of their guests. Dr. Reed listened attentively, sometimes nodding, sometimes asking clarifying questions. She didn't judge, she didn't give advice, she simply listened. And that was exactly what Alara needed. The chance to finally speak, to vent, to release everything that had been accumulating for years. Alara, Dr. Reed said when the story was finished, I want you to understand something very important. What is happening in your family is not your fault. You are not responsible for your husband's behavior. His behavior is his choice. His responsibility. But I'm not perfect either, Alara objected. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. There is no amount of effort that justifies humiliation, Dr. Reed said firmly. No one has the right to treat you the way your husband treats you. It doesn't matter what his excuses are, stress at work, fatigue, whatever, that doesn't give him the right to insult you. Alara felt something inside her clench. Tears welled up in her throat. I endured it for so long, she whispered. I thought I had to preserve the family for my daughter, that being a divorced mother was a stigma, that I couldn't make it alone. And what do you think now? Now I think it's better to be divorced but alive, than married but dead inside. Dr. Reed smiled. That is a very important realization. You've already taken a huge step just by coming here. Tell me, do you have a plan of action? Alara told her about the conversation with Hope, about starting to pack her things, about the bank account. Very good, Dr. Reed nodded in approval. You're acting correctly, but I would advise a few more things. First, consult with a family law attorney. Find out your rights in a divorce, how assets will be divided, how to file for child support for your daughter. Second, gather your documents, your ID, your daughter's birth certificate, your marriage certificate, documents for the house if you have access to them. Third, as much as possible, document the instances of psychological abuse. How do I do that? You can record his insults on your phone. You can ask witnesses to provide statements. For example, the guests from that night. That can help in court if it comes to that. Alara nodded, jotting everything down in a notebook. The to-do list was growing, but strangely, it didn't scare her. It calmed her. Concrete actions, concrete steps. That was better than spinning helplessly in the same place. And one more thing, Alara. Dr. Reed leaned forward, looking her in the eyes. Be prepared that when you announce your decision, his reaction may be unpredictable. Some men become aggressive when they realize they are losing control. Others, on the contrary, start professing their love, promising to change. It's important to remember that people only change if they themselves want to and work on it. Promises made in a moment of crisis rarely mean anything. I understand, Alara nodded. They talked for another half hour, and when Alara left the office, she felt as if she had been reborn. For the first time in many years, she had clarity. She knew what to do next. The following days were spent in meticulous preparation. Alara made an appointment with a lawyer who explained the divorce and contentious division process in detail. It turned out she had every right to the house. It had been purchased during the marriage, so it was marital property. Julian couldn't just throw her out on the street. In secret, she gathered the documents, made copies, and sent them to Hope for safekeeping. She talked to Maya, preparing her daughter for the coming changes. And all this time, she behaved with Julian as usual. She cooked, cleaned, didn't argue. He even commented that she had become calmer. In reality, it was the calm before the storm. On Saturday, Julian once again invited the same guests, Derek and Chloe. Alara agreed, although inside everything clenched at the thought of a repeat of the previous night. But she understood that it might be the last chance to document his behavior in front of witnesses. The evening began calmly. Alara set the table. Julian greeted the guests with his usual cordiality. Derek and Chloe seemed a bit tense. The memories of the previous visit were apparently still fresh, but they tried to act naturally. During dinner, Julian was surprisingly pleasant. He joked, told stories. He even spoke approvingly a couple of times about the dishes Alara had prepared. She sat silently, watching him and thinking how skillfully he could wear masks. To others, he was a charming, successful man, an attentive husband. Only she and Maya knew the truth. But as the wine bottles emptied, Julian began to change. His voice became louder, his gestures broader, his gaze heavier. Remember, Derek? In college when we were both after the same girl? He laughed. What was her name? Caroline, maybe? I think so. Derek smiled uncomfortably, glancing at his wife. She was a beauty, Julian continued. Long legs, a spectacular body. Not like now. He looked at Alara pointedly. Over the years, they all let themselves go a bit. Alara pressed her lips together but remained silent. And Maya? Chloe cleared her throat, changing the subject. How is she doing in school? So-so, Julian dismissed. Barely getting by with C's. Takes after her mother. I thought I'd have a smart, capable daughter, and it turned out to be just another gray mass. Julian! Chloe was indignant. How can you talk about your own daughter like that? What? You can't tell the truth? Julian poured himself more wine. Do I have to lie and say I have an outstanding daughter? I'm a realist. I see things as they are. Maya is a wonderful girl, Alara said quietly but firmly. She is kind, smart, talented. The fact that she doesn't get straight A's doesn't make her any less. Julian turned to her. Irritation flashed in his eyes. Oh, look, he sneered. A defender has appeared. You'd be better off raising her properly instead of pitying her all the time. I do raise her. Alara didn't look away. Unlike you, who doesn't even remember the last time you talked to her about anything other than grades. Because I have nothing to talk to her about. Julian's voice was rising. She's just as boring as you are, always with a sour face, always unhappy with something. Maybe she doesn't like her mother being yelled at and insulted. Alara felt something she had suppressed for so long boiling inside her. Maybe it's hard for a child to live in a house where the father behaves like a tyrant. A tyrant? Julian shot up. The chair fell back with a crash. I'm a tyrant? I who work like a dog to support you both? Money doesn't give you the right to humiliate people. Alara also stood up. Do you think that because you earn money, you can behave however you want? Insult? Humiliate? Pressure? That's exactly what I'm saying. Julian pointed a finger at her. You are an ungrateful brat. You always have been. I gave you everything. A house, a family, stability. And you only know how to complain and whine. I'm not complaining. I'm stating facts. Alara's voice was icy. You are a psychological abuser. You are destroying my personality, our daughter's self-esteem, turning our home into a place I'm afraid to come back to. Abuser? Julian burst out laughing, but the laughter was cruel. She's even learned the terminology. Probably got it from the internet, right? The feminists taught you to blame men for everything. Julian, isn't that enough? Derek tried to intervene. Let's calm down. You shut up, Julian roared at him. This is my family, my house. I decide things here. No, Alara said quietly but clearly. You don't decide anymore. And suddenly, before she could stop herself, the words came out on their own. I'm leaving you, Julian. I'm filing for divorce. Silence fell. Alara herself stood motionless, surprised by what she had just said. This wasn't in the plan. She had planned to leave quietly at night, without scenes or explanations. But years of silence had erupted in a single moment, and now there was no going back. Then we're leaving tonight, she thought, right after this, before he can react. And don't even try to stop me, she added more firmly. I know my rights. Julian's face slowly started to turn red. Derek and Chloe sat, not knowing where to look. They clearly had not expected to be witnesses to such a scene. You wouldn't dare, Julian growled. You're not going anywhere. You have no money, no place to live. Your job is a joke. You'll die without me. Maybe, Alara nodded. Maybe it will be hard. Maybe I'll have to start from scratch. But you know what? I'd rather live in a rented room with peace of mind than in this house with constant fear and humiliation. Julian was silent, breathing heavily, his fists clenched and unclenched. Alara saw the emotions cross his face. Anger, disbelief, fear. Yes, fear. For the first time, she understood that he knew she was serious. You're bluffing, he said finally, but his voice sounded uncertain. You just want to scare me. You're making a scene in front of the guests, so that I'll what? Apologize? Beg you to stay? No, Julian. Alara shook her head. I'm not bluffing. And I don't need your apologies. It's too late. Way too late. Too late? He took a step toward her, and Alara instinctively stepped back. Derek stood up, ready to intervene if necessary. We've been married for 15 years. We have a daughter. You can't just get up and leave. I can and I will. Tomorrow morning, there was not a hint of doubt in Alara's voice. Why? Julian spread his arms. Over a few harsh words? All men lose their temper sometimes. It's normal. You're just too sensitive. It's not about a few harsh words, Alara spoke slowly, clearly, as if explaining something to a child. It's about years of constant humiliation, about you destroying my self-esteem, about my daughter crying at night and being afraid of becoming me, about me forgetting how to smile, how to enjoy life, how to feel like a person. You turned me into a servant you can order around. But I'm not a servant. I'm a person, and I want to be one again. Chloe sobbed quietly, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Derek put a hand on her shoulder, watching the scene with a grave expression. Alara is right, Julian, he said suddenly. What you're doing is wrong. I kept quiet before because I didn't want to get into someone else's family business. But now that it's come to this, you're behaving horribly. You don't treat a wife like that. You too, against me? Julian turned to his friend with a hysterical note in his voice. Everyone is against me. I'm the only one to blame for everything. Yes, Alara answered simply. You are the one responsible for the destruction of our family. I tried. For years, I tried to be a good wife, to please you, to live up to your expectations. But nothing was ever enough. I was always at fault, always not smart enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough. And you know what the most terrible part is? I almost believed it. I almost started to think I really was worthless. But then I looked at my daughter. I saw how she was afraid of becoming me, and I understood that if I didn't stop this now, I would not only destroy myself, but her too. Julian slumped into a chair, covering his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. It was unclear if he was crying or just trying to compose himself. I didn't want to, he mumbled. There's stress at work, I get so tired. And you come home and there are more problems, complaints. Everyone has stress at work, Alara said harshly. But not everyone takes it out on their loved ones. Not everyone turns their home into a battlefield. It's your choice, Julian. Your responsibility. I can change. He lifted his head, tears glistening in his eyes. I swear I can. I'll go to a therapist. I'll work on myself. Just don't leave. Don't take Maya, please. Alara looked at him and felt a strange mixture of pity and relief. Pity because he truly seemed broken. Relief because she no longer felt responsible for his emotions. If you really want to change, do it, she said. Not for me, not for Maya, for yourself. Because the way you're living now, you're unhappy yourself. You're full of anger, always dissatisfied, always tense. You need help. But I can no longer be your victim while you figure out your problems. Then give me a chance. Julian reached out his hands to her. A week, a month. You'll see, I'll really change. No, Alara shook her head. I've heard those promises hundreds of times. After every scandal, you swear it won't happen again. And a week later, everything repeats itself. I don't believe your promises. I'm sorry, but Maya, he clung to the last resort. Think about your daughter. She needs her father. Do you want her to grow up in a broken home? I want her to grow up in a healthy environment, Alara answered firmly. And that's impossible as long as we live together. You can see her if you want. We'll discuss it civilly. We'll make a visitation schedule. But I won't let you damage her mental health like you damaged mine. I didn't damage anything. Julian jumped up, back on the attack. You two are just too sensitive. I spoiled you. That's the problem. I should have been stricter, tougher. This is exactly why I'm leaving. Alara headed for the door. Not even now. When I'm telling you I'm leaving, can you admit your fault? For you, the problem is always with others. You're never to blame. Alara, wait! Julian lunged after her, but Derek blocked his path. Let her go, he said quietly. Julian, let her go. You've done enough. Alara stopped by the bedroom door and turned back. She looked one last time at her husband, the man with whom she had lived half her life. The man she had loved no longer existed. Maybe he never did. Just an illusion, a beautiful image she had created for herself. Goodbye, Julian, she said. I truly hope you find help and become a better person. For yourself? She entered the bedroom and closed the door. She sat down beside it, listening. Muffled voices came from behind the door. Derek and Chloe were saying something to Julian. He was responding, his voice rising and then breaking. Alara pulled the pre-packed bag from the closet and checked the documents. Everything was in place. Then she quietly slipped out the back door. The house was single-story. It wasn't hard to leave unseen. She circled the house and knocked gently on Maya's window. The girl opened it. Her eyes were red. I heard everything, she whispered. Mom, I'm so proud of you. Get your things, Alara whispered back, quick and quiet. We're leaving right now. But you said tomorrow morning. I changed my mind. I don't want to risk it. The cab is on its way. Maya nodded and began hastily stuffing her things into a backpack. 10 minutes later, they were on the dark street with 2 duffel bags and a backpack. The warm night wind blew through Alara's hair, but she didn't notice. She only felt a strange, almost intoxicating sense of freedom. "Mom, will Dad look for us?" Maya asked quietly, clinging to her. "Possibly, but we're doing the right thing. Tomorrow I'll take you to Aunt Hope's, and then I'll come back to sort everything out officially. I'll get the rest of our things and talk to the lawyer. What if he doesn't let you in the house? The house is mine by law too. If there's trouble, I'll call the police." Alara was surprised by her own decisiveness. A week ago, she would never have imagined she'd be capable of something like this. Now, it felt natural. The cab arrived 5 minutes later. The driver silently helped load the bags into the trunk. Alara gave the address of the bus terminal. The overnight bus to the city where Hope lived left at midnight. They were on time. As the car pulled away, Alara turned and looked at the windows of the house. The light was still on. She imagined Julian sitting with his head down, Derek and Chloe trying to calm him. A part of her felt guilty for leaving like this, without waiting for morning, without explaining everything calmly, but a much larger part knew she had done the right thing. An emotional farewell, tears, pleas, all of that, would have only prolonged the pain. "Mom," Maya squeezed her hand, "do you think we'll ever come back? I mean, not with Dad, but just home? That place was never really a home, honey. Maybe a pretty one, maybe a comfortable one, but a cage nonetheless." Maya nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "I'm scared," she confessed. "But I'm also happy. That's normal, totally normal." Alara kissed her daughter on the crown of her head. Change is always scary, but sometimes it's necessary to be able to keep living. There were few people at the bus station. Alara bought 2 tickets for $65 and they sat in the waiting area. There was an hour until departure. Maya rested her head on her mother's shoulder and fell asleep, emotionally exhausted. Alara sat staring into space, thinking. She thought about the past, about those 15 years that now seemed crossed out of her life. No, not crossed out. They had given her Maya. They had taught her many things, even if through pain. But that past no longer had power over her. She thought about the future, blurry, uncertain, intimidating. She would have to find a place to live, maybe a new job in another city. There would be legal proceedings, division of assets, the divorce process. There would be meetings with Julian that would undoubtedly be difficult. But all of it seemed possible because she was not alone now. Hope had promised to help. Dr. Reed had said she was ready to guide her, even from a distance. And most importantly, she now had a goal. Not just to survive, but to live. To truly live. The phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Alara, it's Derek. Chloe and I want you to know we're on your side. If you need help, even testimony for the court, count on us. And I'm sorry we were silent before. We were ashamed to admit we saw what was happening and didn't intervene. We wish you luck. You are very brave." Alara felt her eyes fill with tears. She quickly replied, "Thank you. That means a lot to me." Another text. This time from Hope. "My girls, I'm waiting for you. The room is ready. The bed is made. There's food in the fridge. Come soon." Alara smiled. For the first time in many years, she smiled truly, from the heart. The bus arrived on time. She and Maya found their seats and stowed their things. As the bus pulled away, Alara leaned against the window and watched the city lights stream by, the city that had been her home for 15 years and was now becoming the past. "Mom," Maya called, getting comfortable. "Tell me about Aunt Hope. I barely remember her." "Hope is my best friend," Alara began, sitting next to her daughter. "We met in college, freshman year. She was so bright, cheerful, always knew what to say to lift your spirits. We were inseparable for all 4 years of school. Then life took us to different cities. She went to work. I married your dad. We saw each other less and less. But you know what's amazing? True friendship doesn't depend on distance. She always sensed when I was down. She always found a way to support me. Does she have a family?" "No, she's not married. She says she hasn't found her person and doesn't want to settle for less." Alara smiled sadly. "Maybe she's wiser than I was. I settled for less and lost 15 years. You didn't lose them, Mom." Maya took her hand. "You have me. Aren't I worth those 15 years?" Alara hugged her daughter, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "You're worth everything in the world," she whispered. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'll do everything to make you happy, to make sure you have a different life, not like mine." "I will," Maya said with confidence. "Because you gave me an example. You showed me that it's never too late to change your life, that you can find the strength to leave, even when it's really scary. Thank you, Mom. They held each other, listening to the quiet hum of the engine. Outside the window, the lights of towns, dark fields, and isolated ranches passed by. Behind them lay the old life, and ahead, a new, unknown one, but it was no longer so frightening. Alara took out her phone and opened the Notes app. She started writing a list of tasks for the coming weeks. Find housing, get a job or transfer to a pharmacy in Hope City, enroll Maya in a new school, file for divorce, meet with the therapist, start taking care of herself, exercise, maybe sign up for a class. The list grew, and that was good. Concrete goals, concrete actions. Not empty dreams, but a real plan. The bus arrived at the station at dawn. The sky was just beginning to lighten, tinged with soft shades of pink and orange. Alara and Maya stepped out onto the square, dragging their bags. The air there was different, fresh, lighter. Or maybe it just seemed that way to Alara because she could finally breathe with her whole chest. "Girls, over here!" a familiar voice called, and Alara saw Hope waving her arms near the exit. She had hardly changed in all those years. The same dark, curly hair, the same life-filled brown eyes, the same wide smile. Only the wrinkles by her eyes had deepened a little, but they suited her, giving her face character. They ran towards each other, and Hope hugged Alara tightly, so tightly that she felt the tears roll down her cheeks again. Tears of relief, of joy, of gratitude. "It's okay. You're here. You're safe," Hope whispered, stroking her back. "I'm so proud of you, so proud." Then she pulled away and turned to Maya. "And you, beautiful, you're all grown up. The last time I saw you, you were maybe 8, and now you're almost a young lady." Maya smiled shyly, and Hope hugged her too. They got into the car, a small but comfortable sedan, and headed to her house. Along the way, Hope talked nonstop, telling them about the city, her work, her home. She worked as an accountant for a large company and rented a spacious house in a good neighborhood. "I have plenty of space," she said, "so don't worry, you'll have room to settle in. Alara, a room for you, another for Maya. You'll live like queens." The house was bright and cozy. Hope had clearly made an effort. On the table was breakfast waffles, fresh juice, and coffee. In a vase, fresh flowers. The beds were made with new linens. "Settle in, rest," she said. "I have to run to work. I have an important meeting today. I'll be back at noon. There's plenty of food in the fridge. Don't be shy. The keys are on the dresser." "Oh, and," Hope turned to her friend, "your ex called me last night, about 20 times. I didn't answer." Alara nodded. "Thanks for letting me know. I'll turn on my phone later and see what he wrote. Just don't let him pull you into an emotional roller coaster," Hope warned. "He'll now try every means to regain control. Promise, swear, maybe even threaten. Stay firm." "I'm not going back," Alara said firmly. "That chapter is closed." Hope left, and Alara and Maya were left alone. The girl fell asleep almost immediately. She hadn't slept all night on the bus. And Alara, though she felt tired, couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts were swirling in her head. She turned on her phone. 43 missed calls from Julian. 27 messages. She opened them and began to read. The first ones were furious. "Where are you? Come back immediately. You've kidnapped my daughter. I'll take you to court. You'll regret this." Then the tone shifted to pleading. "Alara, forgive me, please. I didn't mean it. I'll change. I swear. Come back, please. I can't live without you both. I can't. You know I love you. Give me a chance. Just one chance." And the last messages were aggressive again. "You're destroying our family. Maya will hate you for this. You're nothing without me. Remember that." Alara read everything twice and then slowly exhaled. Dr. Reed had warned her about exactly this, the attempts at manipulation, the cycling between threats and pleas. It was called the cycle of abuse. And Julian was following the script perfectly. She wrote a short message. "Julian, I will make a final decision after we discuss everything calmly and with the involvement of a lawyer. For now, I need time and distance. I ask you not to call or write. When I am ready to talk, I will contact you." She sent it and blocked his number. That was it. The line of communication was cut. She went into the room Hope had assigned her, lay down on the bed, and to her own surprise, she began to cry. Not from grief, but from relief. From the feeling that it was all over. From the knowledge that she was free. After crying for about 10 minutes, Alara washed her face, had some coffee, and sat down at her laptop. It was time to act. She opened housing search websites. They needed their own place, even a small rented apartment, but their own space. Hope, of course, had said they could stay with her as long as they wanted, but Alara didn't want to abuse her hospitality. Then she went to job portals. To her surprise, there were several openings for pharmacy technicians in the city, and with a higher salary than she had before, about $3,000 a month instead of her previous $2,200. She sent her resume to 3 pharmacies. The next step was to find a school for Maya. Alara reviewed rankings, read reviews, and chose 2 schools in the neighborhood where they could potentially rent a home. By noon, when Hope returned, Alara already had a detailed plan of action for the next month. "Wow, you don't waste time," Hope admired, looking at the list. "That's the right way to do it. The sooner you start your new life, the easier it will be." "Hope," Alara looked at her friend seriously, "I don't know how to thank you. You can't imagine how much your support means to me." "Hey, we're friends," Hope took her hand. "And friends help each other. Remember how you supported me when my mom died? How you came, stayed with me, didn't let me go crazy? I still owe you for that. You don't owe me anything. And I don't owe you anything. We're just here for each other when it's needed." Maya woke up in the afternoon, rested and calmer. The 3 of them sat in the kitchen eating lasagna that Hope had made. And for the first time in many years, Alara felt what a normal, quiet evening was like, without tension, without the fear that someone would start yelling at any moment. "I like it here," Maya said, smiling. "It's nice here. It's safe here," Alara corrected. "And that's the most important thing." The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Alara returned to her old city, accompanied by a police officer as her lawyer had advised, and collected the rest of her things. Julian didn't stop her, though he was cold and distant. "You're really doing this," he said as Alara packed the last box. "You're destroying our family." "I'm not destroying it, Julian," she replied wearily. "I'm saving what can still be saved, myself and our daughter." "And me? Don't I deserve to be saved?" Alara looked at him for a long time. "Only you can save yourself if you want to, but it's not my responsibility anymore." She took her things, the documents, and half of their joint savings, about $20,000, as mandated by law, and left. She never returned to that house again. In the new city, everything started to fall into place surprisingly well. Alara was hired at a large, modern pharmacy with a good team. Maya was enrolled in a school where she quickly made friends. They rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood for $1,200 a month. Life was slowly, step by step, but firmly getting back on track. Alara continued with therapy, now with a local specialist recommended by Dr. Reed. She learned to set boundaries again, to work through the guilt that sometimes washed over her in waves. And one morning, 3 months after leaving, Alara woke up and realized she had had a dream. A normal, vivid dream, not a nightmare or an anxious vision. She got up, went to the mirror, and saw a woman smiling for no reason, just for the joy of a new day. And she understood she was living again, truly living. Thus ended the story of Alara, a woman who chose herself. If this story helped at least one person find their strength, then it was written with purpose. Take care of yourselves. You deserve a love that doesn't hurt,